You ready?
Whenever you are. Give me the. Good afternoon, members of the committee. Today is Providence Housing Price Task Force. Today is Monday, February 24th. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Chairwoman Mary Clay Harris,
Present.
Vice Chairman Pedro Espinal is absent. Councilwoman Althea Graves,
Present.
Councilwoman Shelley Peterson is absent. Councilor Justin Reyes. We have 3 present, 2 absent, we have a quorum.
Thank you so much. Before I have the clerk read our first item, I would like to welcome Leonardo Theus, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I called her niece at one time. That's why I'm just used to calling her my niece. But anyways, yeah, and so thank you for joining the Housing Price Task Force. She's from the legal department, and we also have Miguel Young, who is going to be leading us up. So we're in a new direction right now, and I'm excited about it. Madam Clerk, please read item 1.
Item number 1, discussion relative to the outline of the final report of the Housing Crisis Task Force.
Okay, so at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Miguel Young to take us through this final report, the meaning behind it, how it came about, who worked with him, and all of this other stuff. So we're ready, whenever you are.
Thank you. Do I need to say my name into the record or something? Well, hi, everybody. Miguel Youngs. I am on the policy team, the deputy director of policy. We've talked a lot about this stuff. I'm very excited to be here to try to reflect back what is the result, or it's not the result, it's the sort of ongoing work.
Just before you get started, I'm so sorry, Miguel.
Yeah.
I would like to enter this as a, into our record as item exhibit A, 8H. Sorry about
We have a
that.
motion.
8H. Second. It's been, motion been made and second.
Right.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, ayes have it. Let's
Great.
continue.
Great, thank you. So I'm just going to lead us through some slides that I prepared. That I hope can just set a little bit of the context, the content, what we're working on, how we got here, and where we want to go together, like truly together. So the first slide is just like an introduction, and you'll have it in front of you. And these slides are about the draft outline, which I shared with you. And that outline is based on all the work you all did, which I'm sure you remember, there's a lot. We went back and looked. There was 11 meetings, actually really, this is the 12th meeting, I believe it's the 12th meeting. And one thing I'm very grateful for, I want to add that there was requests to have these binders. That made our task of going back and sort of capturing all of the information you got so much easier. So whoever requested the binders, I just want to thank you, because
We'll
it's
take credit.
all of it.
So Theo takes the credit.
I know it was a lot of work to make them, but you know, it was work well spent. And we use those binders to review all of those presentations you got from all different agencies. There was, I believe the police department got in here, we had developers in here, we had people from the administration talking about the sort of whole big problem that is the housing crisis. And sort of analogy I used with the chairwoman earlier when I was talking to her was, I was really thinking about it. You all sat through 11 lectures, and you know, you could go to Rhode Island College and take 11 lectures on something and they give you a degree. So you all kind of like, you did enough to earn a degree on this. So those 11 meetings, we tried to capture this outline, the expert testimony, and then also what's been added, because it's been almost a year since you all left, a lot has changed. And we've heard from each of you, come into the office, new issues, new priorities. There's a new president since we last met, so that's a whole nother issue. And we tried to actually incorporate those, because every time we meet with the policy team, we take copious notes, and we did our best to include things that you've asked us about, or we've been working on behalf of you, that just fit really well into this whole process. So that was That's the addition that's been made. It's everything in that binder, plus everything that was brought to us. And the goal here is to take this outline, which really is just a blueprint, and turn it into a final report. That can drive policy change. That's the word I use, and I think that's a good way to describe it. Maybe the next slide. So it's just sort of what I just said. Where this outline came from, all the information in it from conversations you all have had. We really believe in capturing the work you've done in this outline. We didn't want to like add to it because again, 11 meetings is a lot. And a lot of information was in there and it gave us plenty to take from. And I was like, wow, I'm sending them a pretty dense outline, but when I was really thinking about it, this captures a pretty big binder. So it was a task to sort of consolidate it for you all. So share your next slide, please. So what is in the outline? We tried to just do a couple snapshots. There's the overview of the housing crisis. We put some data in, the data that I think we've all heard a million times. And I can speak personally, this data when it comes to how fast rent is increasing, how fast homelessness is increasing, how slowly new housing is being developed. We've all heard this stuff so many times. Like every time you open the newspaper, it's sort of like a different thing. There's a different thing that Rhode Island is leading the country in, and it's usually bad. And what was a big theme in the presentations to this task force is how all of those are kind of connected. That's what the crisis is, that there are agencies, there are people in this state who are sort of targeting each issue specifically. And I think the goal of this task force was, as the legislative body of the city, was to try to get like a holistic view of the issue. Like, what are all the things contributing to each other? So we did include those numbers, just for everyone's reference, and we tried to cite everything. Something else in this outline, which you'll notice, probably the first thing you notice, is all the paragraphs at the top. This was an attempt to sort of give you a feel of the type of writing that can happen in this report, how things can be explained and how things can be tied together. And to me and to us, that is the power of a report, is you can sort of say a bunch of facts and you can get a bunch of people to sort of nod and agree to the facts, but you can really take people's understanding to a next level if you sort of explain how it all ties together, including using specific examples, including using specific quotes that were said before us, quoting and citing experts. All of that can be done in a report. And those are the things that are often lost when we have to have these conversations in isolation over and over and over again. So that's really what this outline is trying to sort of demonstrate to you all, what that writing can look like. None of this is a final. Just wanted to give you an idea of what the writing can look like. And if you can kind of imagine writing like this, and then all the rest of it, all of the outlines sort of having that type of writing too. And it goes on to just be sort of bullet points, so you can get an idea of what will be expanded. And then, well, let me say it this way. By looking at everything this task force focused on, we sort of identified the key challenges, and this is what weaves its way through this binder. And I'm gonna be a little bit more frank, it's what, when we step outside, what we all see, what you all see in your wards and in the city every day. We talk about affordability. We talk about the housing supply. We talk about tenant protections. We talk about incentives for new development. We talk about these sort of intergovernment / sort of agency coordination, which I think was a big focus toward the end, like the sort of coordination. You feel like the feeling that there's a lot of people out here doing the work, and it'd be just a more coordinated effort. And shelter capacity, which was a really another big thing that we heard at the end. All of that, those are sort of like, that's sort of like a top level overview of the challenges that we saw, especially as articulated in the binder. And then ultimately, the goal is to make some recommendations. This is typical. I think all of you sit on other committees and have sat on other subcommittees. This is something that A lot of them ultimately do. That's actually how they end. They end with recommendations. And the way that, I guess, next slide, sure, this next slide is a good one. So this is how we're thinking about the recommendations, because when you really talk about the housing crisis, obviously, it can be very overwhelming and intimidating because some of these problems have been ingrained for decades. And you can't snap your fingers and make them go away. But there are things that this council can do. And that's what we're, in the slide here, I'm calling those concrete and immediate, actionable. We want to have recommendations like that, because I think that's what the point is. That's why you all come here so frequently to do things. But again, the power of a report, the power of being able to use words to write about things, you can also start to articulate a vision. You can actually talk about the bigger picture problems, the things that you see the future. What is the future that Providence needs? Not something that can happen next week, next month, but next decade. Like what do we want to see in this city? And I think this report can also talk about that. I read a lot of reports. It's part of my job. I'm fortunate to be able to be in this building every day. I get reports from different cities, different reports from different committees. And part of what really inspired us was a similar report that came out of Woonsocket. And I think they did something similar, which was you don't want to have a report that's only aspirational goals. You don't want to do that, because then people read it and then they think to themselves, oh, so then what is actually the next step? But you also don't want a report that's only like concrete, because then people will say, well, what about the goal is to kind of be able to combine both. And that's what we'd like to accomplish with the report. All right. So yes, the report, that's the goal. And all of this is up to the task force, of course, but this report can be a way to sort of formally conclude the task force's work. The term is up, council potentially changes, you want to conclude the work of the task force. And oftentimes that's how it's done, is through a final comprehensive report that has those recommendations in place. And then what will it serve as? What will that report actually do? I thought about using this word, and I think it's a good word to use. It's a legacy document. It gets entered into the public record. It will be here after all of this. If you go into the public portal, you can read stuff from the 80s, from the 70s, this will be there. So I think that's really, really, really important for future generations to kind of see that this work was done. It's also a roadmap. It's like a blueprint of how you all see this issue playing out. And it doesn't have to just be a roadmap for the city council. Because a lot of what you all heard, and a lot of what's actually in that binder, are things that require the state's help. I know you all know this well, because I've been to a lot of your community meetings, and I know a lot of the issues you face. The state has to be a partner. It needs to happen together. So this can be a roadmap for that. And lastly, this report can serve as a justification tool. That's the word I used for any ordinances that you all try to move as a council. I think that, and this was, I think, demonstrated, and we all know this, the housing crisis is so big, it'll take some of these ordinances that are going to be recommended are pretty big. And you need to be able to, justify those. Again, to your community meetings, I hear the questions constituents ask. And I've seen the power of being able to say to your constituents, look, we worked really hard and we produced this very big report explaining our thinking. And we highly encourage you all to read this public document. So it'll just give you all like a foundation and a base to like talk about this stuff moving forward. So those are just three things that goes through this. Next slide, sure. Next steps, yes. So next steps, and this could be what we sort of maybe get into as a group here, yeah, this is the last slide. So this is your report. Just like the binder, your names will be on it. And, the policy office, your staff, we are here to help you. We are here to, you know, type things up, take notes, but we are also here to really reflect what you want and what your constituents want and stuff like that. So this is your report and we are here to support. We welcome all feedback. And we really appreciate what we heard already. Councilor Royas, you sent a great email, you know, with just ideas, bullet points. And if you actually, we'll get to it in a moment, but if you look at the draft outline and you flip through it, you'll see red lines. These are additions that have been made since the draft was first sent to you all, based on just, I mean, Councilwoman Graves, you sent some feedback today, and we tried to get it in there. And that's, some of that's outlined in red, I think specifically, you know, starting on page, I guess it's 2, you'll see some red, and that's my attempt, our attempt to sort of get it. So that's sort of the point I'd like to make is that, you know, this is a living document. This is a moving, living, fluid document that we want to work on with all of you. And I know it's a lot, it's daunting, you all have day jobs, other responsibility, there's other issues happening in the city, you have other committees, other meetings. We're here and we want to help you all, so that would probably involve, you know, phone calls, maybe we can, not meeting of the task force to avoid quorum, but like individual hearing from you all moving forward to make this thing reflect what you want, what you believe, what your vision is. And I do think, you know, when we're here and we meet, it's very valuable time. And I always feel the more clarity that we can establish now, the more effective the report will be, the more efficiently we'll be able to write it. So those are my slides. That's what I have to say. I think today, I know there's probably still some digesting going on, because again, this is a lot. And say again, this is all moving, changing, and the type of feedback we've gotten, I thought was great, you know, a little bit here, a little bit there, maybe a lot. I know sometimes you all have like a free Saturday morning or something, and you really spend time thinking, and then you put a bunch of stuff in writing and send it into the office. We're totally fine to accept anything like that. So I think I want to leave the slides at that, and I'd love to hear.
Yes, okay,
thoughts.
thank you so much
Yeah.
for definitely giving us this presentation through the slide and letting us know, you know, exactly steps that's going to be taken by our staff as well. So our team staff, so this is wonderful. This is a good opportunity for us to really do some work. I look at this as an opportunity for us to start to create the work that we've been doing. We've been doing a lot of listening, just like Miguel said, and a lot of these things, because it was a whole year past, and we done been through so much since then, that this is a good opportunity to jumpstart from the very beginning. This is 2025, and we do see a lot of difference that's in the just in the world today, as in the political world today. Miguel brought that up. Where we are right now, we have to start thinking about, okay, what is some of the things that's going to be cut? What is all of that? And this is a good time to continue this work, as we are not promising something that cannot be carried out, but we are going along with the flow of the political world as well. Because what's good about working internally with you guys, making sure that we are definitely working with our creative staff, is the fact that we are going to be able to put out what is realistic, what is real, what can be real at this time. We know there's a lot of conversation around HUD and what they're doing. We know a lot of these low-income basic need social services all rely on the federal funding. And so these are this is good timing because you guys will be doing that cost check along the way. If we try to go down one road, maybe as a committee, and you see something ahead, like cuts or whatever, or the state taking a other direction, that's gonna be easy on us. But it seems like we are beginning to create some work. And so I'm gonna stop right now, I just want to set that stage. And I want to hear from you guys, because you've been working very intensely on this document, which is very good.
Yeah.
And I'll start with you, Councilwoman Race, and definitely hear whatever we can talk about.
Well, I just wanted to touch on all the stuff that we read, and to make sure that we're all, because it's recently added and it's all.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure,
Feedback, right there. That's a good beginning.
um. I think some of it's very self-explanatory, but I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page.
I appreciate that.
I may think it's self-explanatory to me.
It may mean something different
to you.
Thank
Yeah.
you, appreciate that stuff.
The additional, task force recognized that this is page 2.
Yeah,
That's one of the things I wanted in there, and I'm glad you put that sentence in. And I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page, and I think the reason for that is we all know that there are some people that are not gonna go into a show. There is, I don't care if it's a 5-star hotel, they're not going, you know, I'm glad we threw it in, but it sounds like it's just thrown in. Do we have, you know, it says recognize and some of them blah, 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 and this final report will explore ways to address their unique needs. Who's gonna do that? Us, you guys.
no, I understand, yeah,
I know.
Yeah.
So are we gonna be meeting again? I guess I'm not back.
Oh, this committee is up and active. We know that you're gonna have a challenging job with the sitting on the finance committee. We realize that. And so we want to make sure that we're not overwhelming. But anything that you can possibly give this committee, we're up and ready to go. We're ready to work. Anything that we can do to make this road compared to what we see in our communities a little easier for us team staff, I think it's gonna be excellent. I appreciate this, that you started with this, and can you expand a little bit more on the question that you had?
Well, really, like I said, you all have, each of our communities going through this. We all know that there are other issues. And they're all, well, most of them are addressed. I'm sure there's probably something that we forgot that needs to be thrown in there.
of course.
But I would like some more research done in how and if it's being addressed somewhere else.
Yeah,
And go from there, and I'm putting that all on you poor guys because.
that's why we're here, that's why we're here.
So don't stab me in the back when I leave.
No. I'm so happy that you wanna do that, the city's
Yeah.
all of our home, and I didn't think of all that, that's your focus.
Yeah, because I think this is one of the biggest things, because we sometimes tend to say, well, there's not enough shelters, but sometimes there are shelter spaces, but they're not gonna go into them. And we really need to recognize this, because those are the ones that are usually the ones, when people talk about the homeless, it's like, oh my God, the homeless. It's not, a lot of times it's not the other ones, it's the ones that have other issues and their mental issues. And their issues of drug addiction and all that. Those are usually the ones that give the bad name to all of the homeless. And everybody just say, all the homeless, they're all junkies, they're all crazy, they're all this, they're all that. So we need to come up with something, and I know it must be addressed, because I'm sure, I've been to too many cities throughout this country and others. And I know that it's a problem everywhere, and I'm sure that we're not the first ones to bring it up.
Yeah,
So if you guys could probably come up with something and give us some examples of how it's being done, and if it's feasible, and everything that's done in New York, it may not be feasible for Rhode Island. You know, we need to know that we are, a big city in a very small state, so we are not a big city compared to some of the other ones that are going through changes.
right,
So we need to, if we could look into that, I would appreciate that.
absolutely.
The other one is the vacancy tax. This is something that you came up with, I'm just.
I didn't come up with the policy idea, but we have something similar in the books
Mhm.
already. It's called the non-utilization tax, I believe, and I actually don't know how I just pulled that from, but yeah, that's,
No,
I think,
it's a
right?
great idea, but I just wanted to know.
Is that what it's called, the non-utilization tax or something?
Yeah,
Okay.
right.
Wow, but basically, I believe it applies to abandoned property lots potentially, and there's a time frame. Like if. And I don't think I think rarely as a city have we actually
Yeah, cause
enforced
I got a
it.
bunch of abandoned lots.
Yeah, and so that's actually something I'm considering on either amending it to like be more aggressive.
Mhm.
It's unclear how this, sort of the criteria in which they apply the law.
Mhm.
But that's how I kind of got the idea is that, I don't believe the current non-utilization tax. Actually applies to particularly vacant units. So let's say even, so my view of the vacancy tax, you correct me. Miguel, is that if there are, units available, and the property is not abandoned. That, homeowners would be taxed, for keeping those units vacant while they could be, used for housing. So that's what we call, I believe, speculative, holding, correct? And do I pretty much got that?
Yeah, speculative holding, I
Yeah.
put it in there, yeah.
So that's kind of the idea of that, and then, the other public land banks.
Yeah, can you expand a little more on that as well?
Yeah, this would be, again, correct me if I'm wrong, to some degree, would it be an outside, not an agency exactly, but it would be, an entity that just purchases property, but in the name of community, so it's not, it would operate, essentially, it would operate on, with the sort of community consensus of what they want that property to be used for.
Yeah,
Is that kind of the idea?
that sounds about right.
Okay.
What I kind of wanted to add to this conversation for context is, while we're here and talking about this, how I'm seeing these things playing out is, I hear you, Councilwoman Graves, saying like, I want more here. We're gonna work on that with you and for you, and
I
same
think I
thing
want
with you.
more clarification.
Yes.
on what these-
Absolutely, and you too, Councilor Reyes, and, how we ultimately choose together to express these plans and ideas we will have to decide at what point is it like, what is more practical and what isn't.
Right.
And going back to, the reason I even put a whole slide in there was some of these we're gonna get to a point where we're gonna say, what, this is an idea that could make Providence, like, the housing market in Providence, perhaps better for the people who live here. Is that something that the city can do in 2025? Now, that sometimes is gonna be a hard question to answer, and maybe the answer is no. But regardless,
Mhm.
again, going back to this idea of a legacy document, that idea is. I'm gonna say something personal, it's a lot of that stuff in that binder is. You're presenting stuff that is big ideas that would take a long time to accomplish. And I think a lot of that will be in the report, so,
Yeah.
and again, we're gonna use. The beauty of the report is you can take your time to sort of explain that, and you're not committing yourself to it.
And I don't think, I thought this was gonna be something that we're gonna be doing in 2025, or probably not even in 2026.
It probably would be
Yes,
continued.
Yes,
This is-
but
yeah.
like I said, I wanted more clarification of, or something a little bit more concrete, so people, when they read this, they're like, okay, vacancy tax, what is this?
Yeah.
I
You know,
totally agree with
So
that.
I think we need to have a somewhat clear
Yeah, a bit more meat to the.
Yeah.
Can I just say that when I seen this and talking with Miguel earlier, he described this as, you know, when we go to a restaurant and we look at the menu and it tells you like, oh, this mashed potatoes comes with it, whatever. But you know, if you ask the waiter, there's more. I think that's what's happening. It depends on where our, you know, where we're putting our energy. If we're collected around the energy, is where he's gonna expand it more, even more.
Right.
As we're going through this. And I love the way you think. You're like, is this just for 2020? Are we supposed to fix the world's housing crisis in 2025?
Right.
You know, you're absolutely right. This housing crisis task force probably would, and it is a part of the city's, committees, probably got a job to do for 4 more years and it's.
This is
Oh,
a
way
decade,
past
it
what we
took
just-
decades for us to get here.
Yeah,
It's gonna take decades for us to get out.
That's exactly right.
So,
Yeah.
I'm not pushing that at all.
right.
Like I said, that's.
So you hear that, Miguel? We're not pushing, we want.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
We want,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And the neighborhood level affordable housing report, I think it's a fabulous thing. Because we all know that all our communities are a little bit different.
Yeah.
Even though we're probably all gonna be paying the same amount for our housing. According to the new, so, but, I think this is a wonderful thing, and I think this is something that will grab a lot of people's eye. Because they might say, oh, vacancy, I don't know, no tax, you know, and try to go around that. And the bank, okay, we don't know about the banks, because the banks are not, whatever. But when they see a neighborhood level, and it's specific to each area,
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think this is one of the things that the communities are gonna really gravitate to.
yeah, I think so.
sounds like a good suggestion, counselor.
Yes, it is. It's a really good one. And then my other thing is, can we say what a low barrier emergency shelter is?
Yeah, it's actually something that came to mind when you were describing the unhoused population that may be suffering from drug addiction. And so it's actually something, so low barrier shelter, you know, in layman's terms, I think the current low barrier shelter that we have right now in Rhode Island is actually Echo Village. It's right now we have, besides that, we virtually have all shelters that have pretty strict curfews. What I mean by strict, I mean, you know, they ask you to leave early in the morning and then they ask you to come back in. There's a condition set in place at these emergency shelters that make it doesn't make it preferable for folks to want to be there. Instead, they would prefer to live in a tent outside. And so, you know, you have the curfews, there's some shelters that make it sobriety a condition, although it's not all, most of them don't have sobriety as a condition, but there are some. There are some that are you can't lock up your belongings at the shelter. There are, you know, even that there are shelters where there's only bunk beds. There are narrow-based shelters where it only serves men, it only serves women. And so, you know, one of the, you know, when we transferred operations to Da Vinci Center for the I'd say 6 or 7 days in total that Da Vinci was running emergency shelter operations there, it was truly, in my view, one of the only low barrier before Echo Village came online and officially opened. Da Vinci, in my view, was the only low barrier shelter. You know, another example of this is folks who are walking into Da Vinci wasn't asked. We weren't checking their pockets for weapons, or we simply, you know, approached them at the door and just told them, you're safe here. And that signaled to them that they didn't need to use any weapons when they were there that night or those nights. And I think it comes down to the conditions you set in place, but also how you make people feel at your shelter. I think we have a lot of folks at the traditional shelters. I think do really good work. I would guess that they're burnt out. Probably underpaid. And, compassion fatigued. And so when you have the, sort of those at play, I think you can sometimes forget the humanity that's in front of you. And, when folks are coming to the Da Vinci Center, with folks who were using, we had, it wasn't roses by any means, but we had really minimum, incidents. They respected the rules that they couldn't use inside. And they did that because we built rapport. We trusted them that they would follow the rules. Some did not, like, let's not kid ourselves, right? But most did. And that's because they felt safe, they were, and, I think it was a very trauma-informed approach. And I think when you have these emergency shelters that are understaffed, where workers are underpaid, I think trauma-informed practices go out the window. Yeah, I hope, did I?
No, so the low barrier is being able to come in, whether you're a woman or man or have any issues.
I think,
That's
yeah,
the
I think, yeah, like, what, the biggest thing too, yeah, like the curfews, just making sure that we're not putting these restrictions on them that make it impossible for them to want to be there,
Yeah,
That makes sense.
well said.
Yeah, I can hear.
I'm sorry.
Yes,
I love your comments, but if I may, I'll also note that some of the restrictions that are in place are for safety purposes, so they cannot be used legally. Particularly like when you think about, shelters that divide via gender, just because, depending on, sex crimes that folks may have, you're not allowed to go to
Yes.
certain,
Yeah.
populations, so, also keeping that in mind. And if I may also, on point C regarding the public land ban, I noticed the report doesn't take into account the work that the city has done, the extensive work that the city has done in previous years to address, housing crisis. So I'm thinking just off the top of my head, like the Providence Redevelopment Agency was created for the specific purpose of addressing blighted homes, which has led to more housing for, low-income individuals. So also thinking through the programs that have already been established by the city and have been in place and are working. Even our housing prosecution unit, having that system in place, helping folks get the funding from the PRF, the Providence Revolving Fund as well. So there's other things that the city has done that I would recommend taking a look and incorporating into this, because it provides not only the historical context of what has been done, but also can inform what not to repeat itself.
And can I say that a lot of that work started because of the Housing Price Task Force started to meet, and then brilliantly, everybody put their brains together and say, what can I do? What part can we do? I definitely want to make sure that I think about how we ended up where we were, and how, we all started during the time of the shelter that was being closed, the woman in Councilwoman President Mills' ward that was being closed at the time. So we said, we know we have a housing crisis. We know that. But right now we have some immediate needs that's happening. And then one thing jumped from one thing to the other thing to the other thing. And Councilwoman Royce ended up carrying the bulk of this, addressing the encampment that we knew that was happening, that was happening. And that was distracting a lot of the bigger thinking. We really appreciate a lot of the things that have happened since that period of time. And I agree with you. We need to figure out a way to make sure that we are saying, okay, this is what we have. And, even how we can even, do better in that area as well.
Right.
But I appreciate, thank you for bringing it up, because it's very important.
Yeah, 'cause I was there.
Mhm.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Councilwoman.
No, because I have some fears about the low barrier emergency shelter. I think we have to instill something, because at the shelter, the main shelter they had over in Smith Hill,
Yeah.
a 14-year-old girl was raped. There was numerous overdoses, numerous.
Yeah. I should, not to cut you off, Ms. Lee, I should note this, because this is really important, I forgot to mention. The only way I think a low barrier shelter like Da Vinci could continue is if the people running the operations has rapport with the clients, and so Bed Lives Rhode Island was running operations at Da Vinci.
Mhm.
And the reason why there's minimum incidents is because they had already know the staff really well. And so there's a level of like, A, I don't want to break your trust, and B, I don't want to disappoint you because you've known me at my worst. I don't want to, I really don't want to, yeah, I don't want to be roses, like, this is a difficult population, and I have stories that I could share, but I won't do that in a public setting, but not everything ran perfect, at the Da Vinci Center, but, yeah. Yeah, but I think that what you're referring to was unsanctioned. I think, you talking about the Smithfield? Yeah, that was. I think that was an injustice. I think to even call that a low barrier shelter, I'm not saying you are, but it was actually negligence. And it actually put people in harm's way and hurt people. And that unfortunately, well, actually, don't wanna,
Yeah,
I mean, it's ongoing, and that's,
Yeah,
I'll shoot.
I agree.
I'll kind of stop right there before I put my foot in my mouth.
No.
Okay, Miguel, I'm gonna let Miguel jump in and then I'm gonna continue.
Just very quickly, I think this is all tremendous feedback. And, one thing that we could do, we would be here all night, but we could do is we could take each of these bullet points and just go deep into it. And
No, I just wanted to go over the ones that were
red.
red, because I think we had a chance, all of us over the weekend.
Right.
To really,
Give
go
feedback.
into, get the feedback, go into what was going on. And I think that's how we were able to come back and say, well, this sounds good, this looks good. But what about this,
But there's more before this report is even done.
Yes, and I know we're gonna continue to do that, and we're gonna fine tune it. I just want us to just make sure that we're all on the same page.
I agree entirely.
So the last little thing was a public space thing, and I think that's self-explanatory. We discussed that at a meeting that we had not that long ago. But I think this is a really good overview of what happened. And I think I really don't see too much more that we can add besides, just flushing it out a little bit more and making sure that it's written so that everybody can read it and say, okay, I understand what this
Yeah.
document. Because sometimes we do ourselves an injustice when we put all pieces and it looks beautiful, but some of the people that it's supposed to affect don't understand it because we put our little $5 and $10 words in it, and I don't think we need to. I think this is a really good one because it isn't really like that. It's really.
I try really hard to write accessible.
Cause I know, being a writer, I know, cause sometimes I get carried away when you're writing, you wanna make it look good. But what we want it to be understandable for everybody, in there. So really, I really think this is an excellent start. And I don't even know how much more we can really do to clean it up besides, well, we're gonna have to figure out what's gonna go on depending on what happens with the state, what happens with the person that you all voted into this office. I always say you all, cause I had nothing to do with it.
And I think,
Yeah, and we'll get that read from,
we will, but that's. As an outline, sometimes when I was working on this outline, I started like I was like adding stuff, but then it got to a point where I was like, well, this is just an outline.
Yeah,
This is not the report.
yeah,
So I wanted trust me, I was like, ooh, I could write paragraphs about the PRA right now, but like, we're gonna save that for the actual report. So
Yes,
each of these
yes.
bullet points will be. And
flushed out, yeah.
And it'll be different. Everything won't be like, we need to do that again. Some of them will be, we need to do this yesterday. Some of them will be like, we need to think about this, and others will be like, it's complicated. And this is why it's complicated, because it's very complicated. This is one of the most complicated things I think I've seen this council try to tackle, so,
I have a question.
yes.
In this report, we can, and I think earlier you may have said that we can just locate something that we can do. This committee can do immediately to give us at least a jump start to say, okay, we have learned, through this report and do a lot of this, that we have been able to move something, other than just in writing. Is there something this committee feels passionate about that we should be directly focusing on and moving policies right away around this report? Can we do both? Can we do some work and get this report tightened up at the same time?
I think some of this is already happening.
Yeah, it actually is.
Yeah.
Well, I definitely want to make that clear, and definitely I want to make sure that we're not all over the place and multitasking and trying to do inclusionary housing and faith shelters, women's centers, and all the other things that we have that's a crisis before this committee right now. And some of that work, you're right, we already started to do.
Yep.
A lot of it we can jump apart. I like to see that all broken down. Also, some of the things such as, some of the movement around, creating a space was, removing storage, whatever.
Right,
Whatever this council have done within housing, to show some progress.
Yeah.
That, cause you're right, Councilwoman, we are chipping away at it, we are, but it's nowhere. Where is it? It's nowhere.
and you
And if
know,
you think about it, we try to explain it to people in different kind of ways, like you said, from our own perspective. You know what I mean? But it would be really good to talk about not only what this committee has done, but bits and pieces like Councilman Royce have done a lot, even come from this committee. Councilwoman Graves, the same thing. I mean, being on the committee, but outside of, it's talking about right now with the policies that he's working on right now.
right,
How does that tie into the bigger picture of what this entire council is, through our administration is doing? Yeah,
Chair, can I just like add to that and stamp that point you're making? I want to challenge us as a housing crisis task force to make sure this doesn't stay on the shelf to collect dust.
right.
Let's get some ordinances crafted, let's debate these ordinances.
Mhm.
In my view, I got damn near 2 years left to get things going, right? That's my view, so, I wanna see us be as aggressive as possible. I wanna lead Rhode Island on this. We have towns like Johnston that are not leading, and I'm not afraid to publicly say that on record. But I wanna, you kind of lead this effort, as
I
a city.
Yeah, you're right.
And so, yeah, cause we often, have so many commissions and committees and this, and we produce a report. And it's a way to, I think, in my view, pacify the public as if we're doing something,
Mhm.
and I don't want that. I
Right.
want us to really, really be serious about this, and we are, but I want to empty my brain
Mhm.
and just make that public record, so.
yeah,
So right now, for me, especially with this report, like I said, there's a lot of things that we don't know a lot about in the housing world or whatever, because it's not, nobody's been working on it for years and years. I mean, we waited till we're in a crisis, and now we are trying to be active, proactive in something that we just reacting to every day in our neighborhoods with fear of people losing their homes or lives because of, the conditions we see. We see it so bad that, it's sort of hard to think about, and I know we need to be going in both directions, looking at the bigger picture of how we create more houses, how we keep the ones we have, retain the ones we have, and then how we be creative about housing period. But in the meantime, we have human beings that are suffering, that have came to our doorstep, that is not easy to say, okay, we can think about this bigger housing thing, I think within your next year, probably. But right now, in the crisis that I see now, I feel very serious about what can we do for now.
Yeah.
For the people that are outside right now at the city hall, that don't have a place to go to at the end of the evening.
Right, and I think we also need to make sure that we're not just making it seem like we are just concentrating on home.
No, well, it is homeless right now.
No, there's a lot of people almost homeless, because especially with this rebound.
I understand that, but,
But I
Yeah.
don't think so, and
Yeah.
this is my reasoning.
yeah,
We don't wanna start pitting people against them.
no, absolutely.
And if it seems like all we're looking out for is one rule, which is a
Right.
subsection, a small subsection
Mhm.
of the entire city. And there's people that are worried about day-to-day things that may become homeless,
Mhm.
while we're only focusing on the homes that are already there, but we're pitting people against one another.
Yeah.
We gotta make sure that it is
Yeah.
seen that we are working for all of the people.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I mean, I know we all got those phone calls, cause
Right.
I'm still getting phone calls.
Right.
You know, and I tell them, you know what, I took a picture of my little hot thing and my
Right.
reval and sent it to them, say,
Yeah,
join the club.
Right.
I'm part
Right.
of this too. So yes, we're working
Right.
on this, but we need to make sure that the city knows that we're working for everyone.
I don't want to mistake what I said, and because sometimes I do put things out and the message gets lost.
Mhm.
It was not, it's not my intention to take away from what you're just saying. You're absolutely right. Every day people are facing the burden of rent,
Yeah.
cost the burden of housing,
Mhm.
dealing with banks that are about to take their homes. I understand all of that, but I do know right now, today, there's a needed crisis that we are reacting. We're reacting, we're not proactive. I believe a lot of these other things that have caused these problems with people losing their home with banking and everything else is more of a, maybe more of a research, more things that we have to do to try to figure out how to put those things in place without hurting at the same time. You know, if we start to say, oh, well, lower the rent, then we have landlords who will actually throw people out. You know what I'm trying to say? And then, okay, then we'll have another group of homeless people without shelter period. But I feel like the reason we started out even talking about a lot of the things that were before us, the homeless, is because it was the fruit that was hanging, the lowest fruit that was hanging, which was right in our face. And I think because we have not came up with anything, any zoning rules, any things to take the barriers off, churches who may be able to open up their doors, put people, a limit of 5 people, talking about no barrier, I thought you thought about numbers and capacity in their churches. We have more churches than we do schools, or maybe housing, I don't know. We have a lot of churches. But in the same breath, they are limited to what they can do. There was a pastor who I understood in another city who violated and he said, I don't care about that, I'm putting these people in there, and he got penalized. So how do we take those things away, because we got tools we can work with, we got churches, we got buildings, we got basements.
Yeah.
But they got certain limitation of what they can do, because the city of Providence said, I'm gonna fine you if you're violating. Am I wrong?
No, ma'am, no, Madam Chair, and but I also want to note the same point that I made earlier, it's also, safety concerns, because you don't want a church that hasn't been evaluated by the fire department, and God forbid something happens.
How do we
and the
make that
fire-
easier?
Correct, so it would need, considerations in terms of safety, should you consider opening those avenues.
Yeah, but we should figure out a way to make it easier for the churches to even give that kind. I mean, if you can put more burden on me for me to bring somebody in my home, I much rather live in guilt and not bring them in my home than to have the aggravation of having to deal with this letter, this document, or that and that. How do we say, okay, these are some of the things, that's the simplest things that can be done. Well, it's only 2, 3, 4 people in one area that may take that burden off. I don't know, but we need to do something. I'm sorry, Miguel, and then you.
Oh,
How's that?
absolutely.
Yeah, I'll be quick. I just, because I like to jump in just so I can clarify what I'm hearing, so then we go. I think I'm hearing there's a desire to see what can be done. Also, some of what's in here, someone pointed it out, very good observation, is being done. I try to be clever, but I was like, we're already working on this, why not include it? Because that'll make it easier for the results to happen. Some things have already been done as well. And I think that's also worth highlighting. I'll give 2 examples. There's a big example, which since you last met, you know, it was a tough process, but you all passed the comprehensive plan. There's a whole bunch of stuff in that binder about comprehensive plan.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That needs to be
Yeah.
talked about. That was done, and you did great work on that. And another thing, this task force, I reached out to all of you and it had to be really quick, and I felt bad that it was a quick turnaround, but you all wrote a letter. And we said a letter of testimony to the General Assembly for this speaker of that Speaker Shikarchi's bill to ease some of the regulatory red tape or whatever for opening up emergency PAL shelters. And that was an example of an action, and that will be expressed.
Let's see that,
Yeah.
and let's build on that. That's what I'm
Yeah,
talking about.
and a lot of these things
Yeah,
need the state approval, so maybe what I can do is help in the coming weeks. I'll reach out with you all and try to organize this in the way that I think you're asking for, Chairwoman, which is like, these are easy next steps, these are what we've done, and these are the big ones. And I think that'll help visualize.
Yeah.
What we can finish with, does that make sense?
it does.
Great,
And also, you know, we definitely be on the same page of,
Yeah.
we don't wanna pin the city against each other. But in the same breath, we need to talk about that we are working. And these are the things that have caused us to have to work in this direction, because these things are immediately right in our face.
And it's
and-
already, some of that stuff's already in there, we're talking about the
Yeah.
rent, you know, the rents.
Yeah.
I know everybody gets upset, we just come up with different terminology, you know.
Right,
But that free, whatever you wanna call this thing, we
Right.
need to come up with something, and we talked about that when we first got
Mhm.
together, I
Sure.
mean, as a group. And it's something that we've been talking about, I would like to see that come to some type of direction.
Sure.
You know, and I think if we can stabilize that, then maybe we can stabilize some of these other things. Another thing that people are coming up to me saying, how come the housing went up so high?
Yeah.
And I told them a lot of those people that are coming in from out of state and buying these properties for however much they're buying them for. And they want it to be high.
Yeah.
And they're now in our community. Before they weren't in our community, but now they're in our community, so
Yeah.
our prices are gonna go up because they want
Right.
it to reflect on that, you know, their property. And so, I mean, I live around the corner from 3 that are just went up, and it's
Yeah.
like, this is
Mhm.
ridiculous, and believe me, my taxes went up, you know, I'm fighting it, I'm gonna fight that.
We can counselor together.
200 and something $1,000, I was running around telling everybody it was 100, and I looked at it, this is 200 and something $1,000. No, no. That is not working for me at
Oh,
all.
man, I feel that, I feel that.
Represent the people right now.
Oh, yeah. Oh, man.
so, yeah, I think this is good. I love the healthy, conversation that we've had.
Yeah.
You wanna add something else?
Well, you know, it's an ongoing conversation, like I said, and I think something just to draw maybe a little attention to, I know everyone read it, but I tried to be really clear with even the way I like broke it up.
Which
So really-
page are we talking?
I guess I'll talk about the first page for starting.
Okay.
You know, I broke it up with, you know, crisis of cost, supply, and
Sure.
availability. I talked about strengthening tenant security.
Right.
expanding affordable housing, promoting safe and healthy housing, addressing homelessness.
Right,
And that's the big picture.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
And that's why I like about it.
yeah,
yeah.
Because if people read this, it's inclusive, it's not,
Mhm.
we're looking at one sector. We're talking about everybody,
Right.
everything, you
Yeah.
know, and I think that, and it's what we need. you
yeah.
know,
I agree. Yeah, I definitely agree.
And maybe last thing I'll add is when I was in school, I think other people maybe had this experience, you have to do like a group project. You have to write a paper with a group, and that usually goes one of two ways. It's either the hardest paper you ever wrote or the best paper you ever wrote. And I feel like this is such a good group, we can make it like the best paper ever wrote, so.
Yeah.
It's my opinion.
And we'll make it a group thing, because sometimes those group things is, you do all the work. Everybody take all the credit.
College flashbacks,
Yeah,
the worst experiences.
this is gonna be a good experience, trust me.
Madam Clerk, could you please read the second item into the
Yes.
second, please?
Discussion relative to the timeline of the final report.
Okay, so let's talk about that and what we already talked about all the work we gotta do. And Miguel's gonna go out and fix out all the stuff that we talked about earlier, but then, we should talk about, like you said, really putting it out there to the people and what, you know, we talked about what we wanted to look like. We talked about how it has to be inclusive with all the housing stuff. Let's talk about maybe what we're thinking that we can do based on our committees and our capacity to work with our team, because they're gonna work as hard as we're working. A timeline, let's say a potential timeline. Let's jumpstart off something so we can start, make sure that we put the work to work. And then, probably if we have to change it in this committee, we'll change it. There's no particular vote, but we can have a discussion. I'm only wanting to have a discussion about it, and eventually I guess we would be able to vote on what we need to talk about. So start with you, Councilwoman Grace. You got great ideas. You out there.
No,
I need you to trigger other council first, and then now we get going.
One good thing about this is we had all the people come in, so we don't have to do all the research. So we don't have to have those meetings that every time we turn around, we were in the meeting for hours and hours and hours. So, I think this is something that we don't have to meet quite as often.
No, well, we can talk about that too.
Yeah, I think, the timeline really has to do with research, because we're gonna have to research some of this. Sometimes research, if we think we get, well, today's, you know, you can go on the computer and get a lot of things really
Yeah.
quick, but we want it to be true. We want to make sure we went through all the resources, not, okay, I Googled it and this said, this and this, you know. But, I was thinking maybe we could just say, we got 6 months time. And maybe meet once a month. And clarify and refine, and because to be truthful, the three of us are gonna come in and help clarify something that they already did. All the work really falls on you, so I would like to ask them, what do you guys think? 'Cause you.
Well, I wanna talk, before you start talking to that, I wanna talk to my colleague here.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys are the committee, you guys are driving this work, so, yeah, go ahead.
You know what's, I don't know how fast, the policy team can produce a, you know, close to finalized report on this. I'm overly ambitious here. There's something about getting this done before winter. You know, I feel like when you're in the cold, there's something like a psychological thing where it hits you that if people lose their housing, you know, they're, you know, essentially left on the streets. There's something about this moment right now that I want to kind of take advantage of, and so I don't. Our policy team, they're, you know, I feel like they're, you know, they're burning the, what's the saying, the midnight oil, whatever it's called, but they, you know, ideally, I'd like to get this, at least a draft of a final draft. what's today, it was February, the end of March, is that even possible? I'm not sure. But
try. Yeah.
I would love to shoot for like the end of March, I would think,
And
if that's,
that's fine,
Yeah.
either April first, maybe we can have some, because I'm thinking it's 6 months, I'm thinking it was July, but that 6 months is not July. 6 months is June, it's over beyond it.
and then we could, present it to the one, once we pass it. I think have a serious, public campaign about what we produced here. Let the media know about it, but, yeah, I'd like to get this. End of March is kind of my view, it's still kind of cold in March.
Well, like in New yeah, go ahead, Councilwoman.
I think us getting a package by March is a great thing. I don't think that would be, we still have to really look at it and really fine tune it. So I'm not thinking anything to be done by March. I don't even think anything should be done by April. And my reasoning is we also need to address it with our colleagues, even if you don't sit down, I think they need to have more input in it and everything else. I think we should have something by March and we can go over it and then they should get a chance to do the same thing.
Shout to our colleagues.
So, yes, because, the problem sometimes is we don't talk to one another now, and then that causes a lot of animosity and stuff. So let's make sure that we give them, because it's gonna affect all 15.
That's exactly right. I, at this time, gonna ask our chief of staff to join us at the table and identify.
I could do it from there, from here, I was just gonna.
No, we do things according to, our clerks. Our clerks are right here, identify yourself.
Yeah, I'm Jim Rose, Chief of Staff for the Providence City Council. Just gonna give kind of our team perspective on timeline. I think a lot of what you just said was really spot on. We definitely do not need 6 months ourselves, though that would be, if you were the teacher, a very generous deadline for us. But I think we can move really fast here, like you kind of pinpointed. A lot of what we have to do is already put together. And so it's really just a matter of compiling and formatting, making sure what you have looks nice and is presentable. So we'll move quick. I think talking about the end of March as a timeline from our end seems like the right idea. And I think we're moving mostly with urgency because what I've heard from a lot of counselors is before the August recess, we want to really try to legislate in a meaningful way.
Yes.
And I think this report is going to be instructive for those next ordinance steps. And, we'll come back from recess, have a little bit of time before the end of the year where it's tough to do things. And then all of a sudden we'll wake up and we're in an election year. So we're operating with the urgency if we want this to be useful before the recess. And so you'll get something good from us by then.
With that being said, I think that's awesome. I think even this discussion that we had tonight is a leadway, and a lot of the stuff is already here, is reorganizing. Thank you. Yes, reorganizing it. And so with that being said, I think, we have to go to work. That means Miguel is gonna be calling us, not only calling us, but sending us stuff, and he's gonna want feedback. And I believe, Madam Clerk, sometime within this week, like we're February 4th, I agree with Councilman, we don't have to meet back to back, once a month. Somewhere around March, this is February 24th, and we got somewhere in that date. If we can get another housing price tax meeting in March.
On a Monday?
Before this document even get finalized, to do just what we did today. To make sure that we,
Please note, not March 10th.
not March 10th,
Yeah, not
not March 21st.
So what's your problem we got?
I don't know, I don't have my calendar. but I would like to-
We have
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Not 21st.
3rd, 10, 17, 24, 31, on Mondays.
31?
Do you want to do 31?
Yeah.
Yes, that's what I.
Sounds good
Yeah,
to me.
okay, and that means
Cause if you do April first, I might not believe it.
Okay, that meant that we will be here to finalize, which means there will be a vote on that document that night to say that if we,
Cause you'll be sending us,
yeah,
things
things.
for us.
It's been doing it.
So,
Absolutely.
so I think that's fine, you know.
So March the 30th,
31st.
31st.
We're not coming on Sunday. I'm not. coming on Sunday.
I don't have a calendar in front of me, but it's important that we come back to the table around this. So I just wanna make sure that we lock that in and save the date in your calendars.
5:30?
Same time, yeah. Yes, yes, ma'am, thank you, no, thank you for helping to get this pushed ahead, and that's exactly what we're doing. Now, is there any further business before this committee tonight? No public, now, not right now, we're getting ready. If there's no further business before I entertain a motion to adjourn. Do you want to adjourn or not adjourn?
Oh, sorry.
We're
Yeah.
adjourned, second.
Yeah, so moved.
Yeah, we might get out of here.
Yeah, better than four.
All right,